Welcome in. It is time for 49ers Going Deep, the most in-depth look at the first training camp practice of this 2025 season. There you have the article up on the San Francisco Standard. I've been covering the 49ers now in my 9th season, and today there was a first. In the first 8 seasons, the 49ers had never passed on the first play of training camp in team drills. Today, we saw a first play pass. It was a bomb from Brock Purdy to George Kittle. And there was another first today. This one, much more recent first. We got to see all of those 49ers rookie defensive linemen on the practice field at the same time. It was a rookie bonanza up on the practice field. We could even take a look right now at Alfred Collins because this was his first practice in a 49ers uniform. You could see Alfred Collins is a really tall guy. I'm going to pause it very briefly. Let's let him walk a bit further. Pause it right here. I was standing right next to Alfred Collins. I am 6'5". I'm not short. And, I was just walking down the sideline. Field is reoriented. I was getting myself oriented. And all of a sudden, Alfred Collins is standing right there. And it gave me DeForest Buckner flashbacks, just the frame, right? Maybe even Eric Armstead flashbacks. Both of those guys, 6'7". And I said, wait, who's that? 95. And then I realized, Alfred Collins. He had actually missed the 49ers spring program due to the calf injury that he aggravated at his pro day. That was before the 49ers drafted him. They said he'd be ready for training camp, but they were not lying. Alfred Collins ready at training camp, and he was right there next to Mykel Williams. So Nick Bosa spoke about both of those guys, Mykel Williams and Alfred Collins. Here is the veteran's thoughts on the rookies.
And obviously having Sam and Yetur and Jordan and KD, guys that have been around. But also the new guys. I like it. I like the group. I think we have a lot of talent. I think when you look out on the field, you see NFL bodies out there that look impressive, which is a good thing. Obviously, we're young, but just because nobody knows them now, they play a good couple games, then the whole world knows them. So,
Bosa had another great quote about Alfred Collins, and Mykel Williams talked about the fact that they're going to have to adjust to a new system. They played a different style in college, but once they adjust, Nick Bosa thinks that these guys can be really, really good players. And we know that Nick Bosa is the ultimate technician. So whenever he starts talking about style, technique, all the nuances of pass rushing and defensive line play, we would be wise to listen.
Mykel looked really good. He's very physical. He's got a big reach, so I think he just needs to hone in, obviously, his first day on his aiming points and trusting the system. I think him and Alfred are coming from different styles, so but both of them have immense talent, so it'll be fun to watch them.
Both of them have immense talent, according to Nick Bosa. They obviously both have immense size. There we can see Alfred Collins. One more time, we can go through the drill for Alfred Collins. A wingspan of over 7 feet. He's 6'7". Mykel Williams has a wingspan that's nearly as long as Alfred Collins' wingspan, but he's not quite as tall. Mykel is at about 6'4". So the 49ers have real length with their top 2 draft picks, both on the practice field at the same time together today to open 49ers training camp. Now, this is important to preface because a lot of people are going to be tossing out so many crazy thoughts about the 49ers based on what? A practice in shorts without pads? The 49ers are not allowed to put pads on until they get 4 practices without pads under their belts. So the first padded practice is not going to happen until Monday. They're going to be back out there for practice number 2 tomorrow, practice number 3 on Friday. There will be a day off on Saturday. And then Sunday will be the final day without pads. So we could revisit how these rookie defensive linemen, especially guys who are certified run stoppers like CJ West, who was the 4th round pick out of Indiana. I think we could revisit that once pads do come on. But it was the highlight for me today to stand in that corner of the field, see Alfred Collins, see Mykel Williams, see CJ West, see all those guys with Chris Kasarik, the great defensive line coach, rejuvenating that 49ers room. The 49ers believe that the rookies have given their veterans energy. I think you could just hear Nick Bosa speak on the matter and speak about a whole bunch of things. I mean, Nick, he got really excited even about the 49ers kicking competition. This one was really funny from Nick Bosa. If you doubt that he's re-energized, listen to what he's paying attention to at 49ers practice.
Yeah, paying attention to it, but can't lie.
Why is it?
No, it's kind of exciting.
It was exciting today. I saw Jake Moody and Greg Joseph just go at it, field goal after field goals, like his game of horse, except kicking. And it was a good way to inaugurate the new permanent goalpost at the 49ers facility. They actually did not have a permanently fixed goalpost until this year. They have reoriented the practice fields 90 degrees. So they actually now do also have a 100-yard practice field, which is big for the 49ers. It's actually probably 160 yards from fence to fence. That 160-yard practice field for San Francisco gives them room to do a whole bunch of stuff, but they can actually run a legitimate scrimmage now. You could go 100 yards. You don't have to. I think they were limited to about 60 before. Anyway, the end of that 100-yard practice field with 160 yards of room gives the 49ers the chance to put in a permanent field goal. Back in the day, they used to have to wheel it in. Now they've got the permanent field goal, and it was inaugurated today by Jake Moody and Greg Joseph, the 49ers, two kickers who are going to be in this competition over the course of training camp. So that is part of what's happening today. Everybody make sure that you check out the San Francisco Standard. We have the article there up on the screen. The headline there is where Jacob Cowing's injury leaves an already thin 49ers wide receiver unit as San Francisco begins practicing. You probably saw it in the instant reaction that I did from the helmet outside of the stadium. We talked about the 49ers and Jacob Cowing pulling his hamstring. He's probably going to miss a few practices. So the 49ers are going to have to scramble there. They have already scrambled once by signing Equanimous St. Brown. What I wrote up on the Standard is that this is one of those previews for how difficult this journey is going to be. Doesn't matter who you are in the NFL. If your goal is to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to make it through all of training camp, and you're going to have to make it through an entire 17-game regular season. And then you're going to obviously have to make it through the marathon of the postseason, which is a very, very long race in its own accord. Well, without Jacob Cowing, the 49ers now are back at 9 capable, healthy receivers to run through some of these practices. They may have to add another body, but more than anything, this is a preview of the grind ahead for San Francisco. So read this on the San Francisco Standard. We've got the link in the description. I talk about everything as it relates to the receiver room, and then we pivot to the 49ers defense, which today was highlighted by some of those rookies. I mean, Upton Stout was out there for the 49ers today, almost registered pick 6. I thought it was really good coverage on Russell Gage, and unfortunately, the timing of Upton Stout's break on the football was just a little bit off. I mean, just a tiny bit off. And Russell Gage ended up making a really nice catch. And Upton is one of the guys that we're talking about as a very, very key pivot point for San Francisco's defense moving forward. You've got to replace all these snaps. But one way to really efficiently make the back end better is if you've got a new nickel back who's an effective player from the very get-go. If Upton Stout can fill into that nickel back role effectively, Deommodore Lenoir can stay on the outside. You've got obviously a really, really good corner in Lenoir. You've got a good corner in Renardo Green. He could lock down the other side, and then the 49ers can work the entire safety rotation into comfort. That is a position that is probably going to be up in the air all the way into the regular season, just given the fact that Malik Mustafa is not expected to be back until after the season starts. I would expect Malik Mustafa to be back at some point in the first half of the season. I know that his recovery is apparently going well, but he is now injured that same ACL twice if you include college. So the doctors are going to be really strict with the markers that he has to hit. So today at practice, we saw Jair Brown back. This was his first practice back this season because he wasn't at OTAs. He was coming off of the ankle operation. It was Jair Brown with Jason Pinnock, who is the 49ers veteran free agent signing at safety, who had a really good OTAs. Marquise Siegel, the rookie, I'm sure is going to make a bid to work himself into that rotation, but we can't expect rookies to be performing at a first-string level right away, especially at the first practice of the year. So we're going to have to wait to see on Marquise Siegel. But the 49ers safety position right now with Brown, with Malik Mustafa coming back over the first few games of that season, and with Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant, a couple veteran free agents added to spruce up the room, and Pinnock likely starting week 1, that room could really use some stability at the cornerback position around it. If you're building the secondary as a whole and you anticipate there being some moving pieces at the safety spot, well, then it could obviously help if the cornerback spot has things buttoned up. Linebacker, similar idea as safety. I talk about Marquise Siegel, the 5th-round pick, fastest safety in the 2025 draft class, not taking first-string snaps yet. Same thing at linebacker. You had Nick Martin. 49ers drafted him in the 3rd round. He's also not taking first-string snaps yet. Nick Martin is behind at the very moment Luke Gifford on the depth chart. Again, this is all expected stuff. It's day 1. Pads aren't on yet. The rookies right now, they're swimming in new material. But when we look at the 49ers depth chart, and maybe I can get that up on the screen right here so we can illustrate some of the dynamics that are happening right now for the 49ers. When we look at the 49ers depth chart, we can see what the vision ultimately is for this defense, but we can also recognize that they've got some stopgap veterans that they signed for the time being. So, for example, at the safety position, Jason Pinnock right now is the one that's filling in for Malik Mustafa, but you could see that Marquise Siegel could be waiting in the wings. I think that if Marquise Siegel can translate his awesome athleticism into solid play, it could be Marquise Siegel and Malik Mustafa as the two 49ers safeties for a longer stretch of time, for years moving into the future. Now, that's going to take Marquise Siegel developing appropriately. It's going to take Malik Mustafa returning well from his ACL injury, but you can understand the vision there. At the linebacker position, yes, Nick Martin, shaded here in green, rookie at the top of the depth chart. That's all great for the 49ers. But for the time being, they've got Luke Gifford, who have got listed right here in the middle of the linebacker position, free agent edition, right in the middle of the linebacker position, free agent position, shaded in teal. Luke Gifford currently is a first stringer above Nick Martin. I'll make all these changes to the depth chart as this offseason progresses. We're going to have a 49ers camp battle tracker and everything, and we're probably going to use this depth chart to address that. I could go through some of the other alignments that the 49ers used at practice today, but I'm not going to change it on screen right now. We'll probably do a depth chart show at some point when I'm in a better position to do it with my monitor and everything, because right now that just isn't the case. But you could just know that the rookies, they're not going to have immediate spots in some of these cases. If the veteran is currently the better player with better playbook knowledge, he's going to be higher up on that pecking order. Along the offensive line, by the way, today, Trent Williams did not partake in team drills. He was only in individual drills at the start of practice. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers. In fact, out of the superstar veterans, the skill position players, only George Kittle partook, because you had, I guess George Kittle and Fred Warner, but Nick Bosa was also on the sideline for team drills, just a management program for the 49ers as they go through this training camp. But with Williams out, the 49ers ran Spencer Burford at that left tackle position because Andre Dillard currently out. He's one of the swing tackle candidates as well. So Burford is really the only backup tackle that the 49ers have on a 53-man projection at the moment. Also, Austin Pleasance and Sebastian Gutierrez on the roster, but Burford ahead of them on the depth chart. Ben Barch, with the quad injury on NFI, he was working out earlier for San Francisco, and he was over on the corner of the field. Like, so we saw Ricky Pearsall today running sprints, and he was moving fast. And Ben Barch was just a little further tucked away there into the corner. Those of you who are at practice today as fans might not have even seen Ben Barch because he was kind of hidden behind the fence. It looked to me like he was moving really well. And I asked John Lynch about Ben Barch yesterday, and I said, hey, how long is it going to take for him to be back? Because I wanted to know, is this some kind of longer-term injury? Is this really going to screw up how the 49ers are going through their guard competition? They obviously have to replace Aaron Banks, and Lynch said that it's going to be a relatively quick return for Ben Barch. And then we saw him today moving around fairly well. I would say probably even better than fairly well in that corner of the field. So that is good news for the 49ers. However, for the time being, San Francisco put Nick Zakelj into that backup left guard position. So I know on my depth, I'm going to have to reshuffle this depth chart, because right now I've got Connor Colby right behind Ben Barch, and I have Zakelj behind Jake Brendel at center, because I think that Zakelj might be the runner-up at center if Jake Brendel does get hurt. But remember, they also have Matt Hennessy on this roster, so maybe Matt Hennessy is the true 1B or number 2 at center, and maybe Nick Zakelj can be more realistically considered a guard. Today was the first practice, so today was my first chance to look at this depth chart and then look at what's happening out on the practice field and then cross-check them, and I'm going to be making some of the necessary adjustments to it as time goes by. One thing that I can add to the chart right now is the Jacob Cowing injury. We're going to shade his name in pink because he's hurt, and you can see here there are now 3 names shaded in pink in the 49ers wide receiver room. So that means that San Francisco is stretched a little bit thin at wide receiver. It means that they're much more likely to rely on guys shaded in green. Those are rookies. In fact, I even project Junior Bergen to make the 53-man roster, since I don't anticipate that Brandon Ayuk is going to be on the initial 53-man roster. I think that they're going to put Ayuk on the reserve PUP list at the start of the season. So because of that, you're just seeing a more and more gradual shift of focus to younger players at receiver, which is okay early in training camp. As the season comes closer, though, I'm sure that the 49ers are going to want to make sure that some of the veterans and second-year guys count in that category. They're going to want to make sure that those guys are taking the majority of the first-team reps. For that, Ricky Pearsall has to be back and available at practice, and Jacob Cowing is going to have to return and be available at practice. Pearsall, as I said, moving fast. The key update on Ricky Pearsall is that he has hit his mile-per-hour marks. He's up at, I don't know what it is, 20-something miles per hour on his sprints. He's moving as fast as he's ever moved. I saw it with my own eyes at practice today. 49ers are building up his endurance. He was going through a grueling workout on the field today, and he should be back on Sunday. They are intentionally keeping him out of the first block of practices, and then Ricky Pearsall is going to have the day off along with his 49ers teammates on Saturday. We'll have Pearsall back on the practice field. We'll be able to cover that on Sunday, and that is going to be big given the fact the 49ers are thin with that Jacob Cowing injury at wide receiver. All right, so we are plowing through this. This is our deep look at 49ers practice number 1. The first play was a deep pass from Brock Purdy to George Kittle. Shortly after that, Brock Purdy threw a couple interceptions. But here's a memo to those who might need it. Training camp interceptions do not matter. Anybody trying to make it seem like they do matter is immediately revoking their own football knowledge card. Like, if you know the game, if you know how NFL training camps work, you understand that you don't obsess over QB interceptions, especially on the first day of camp before pads even come on. George Kittle today said it best. He actually talked about Purdy and taking some chances. Let's listen in to George Kittle.
The offense better. Besides that, I mean, I think I've said the same thing for the last 6 months. Everybody asks me, what's different about Brock? He's just vocal. Like, he understands the offense. He's comfortable in the offense. He's taking risks. I like it when he forces the pass. Like, I like that. I'm okay with him throwing a couple of interceptions in training camp. Like, I'd rather him throw them now than later. I want him to force those passes. But just his vocalness and, like, here, when someone runs a bad route or a bad stem with the wrong steps and he yells at them, like, I want that. Like, I want our quarterback to hold guys accountable because, like, a coach can yell at you and then some guys, like, just goes over their head. But when, like, Brock Purdy, your quarterback, yells at you, then it sticks. And so hopefully that continues and he continues to be a vocal leader for us.
So that's been one of the main themes of this offseason. Obviously, Purdy signed the big contract. George Kittle throughout, though, has been talking about Purdy asserting himself more and more. And we've even heard it out on the practice field in some instances when guys have run the wrong route, stuff like that has happened. It's funny, though, because we can go all the way back to Brock Purdy's first career start against Tampa Bay when he told that guy to shut the hell up, maybe in more strict terms. I probably can't use the word right now because the YouTube algorithm wouldn't like it. But Brock Purdy literally told George Kittle, who was horsing around, George can be George, in the huddle against Tampa Bay 2022. Brock Purdy literally told George to shut up. At the time, Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, right? He was a rookie, pick number 262, stepping in against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Purdy says, George, we need you to be quiet. So I bring that story back to illustrate that it is not Purdy being fake and taking on some kind of added leadership role this offseason. Brock Purdy has, from day one, had the guts to step up there and deliver in the midst of some superstar veterans. He hadn't been afraid to talk and show that QB leadership when needed. I just think that he has been able to show even more of that side now that he is firmly established as the 49ers franchise quarterback. I think today he ended up going 10 of 13. One of the picks today, by the way, was probably a tipped ball because Purdy was winding up the throw deep, and then it looked like it got batted a little bit at the line of scrimmages, came out like a wounded duck. And speaking of the safety position and Jason Pinnock was able to dive and pick it off, because once a throw that's meant to go deep is tipped and is just kind of that wounded duck that I was talking about in the air, it is up for grabs for the defense. The offensive players, the receivers, are typically still running their routes, so their back is to where that football is. And the defensive players, especially if they're playing zone, they can feast on that. And that's what happened there. Good interception for Jason Pinnock. That was right ahead of the interception. A much cleaner interception for D. Winters today. He stepped in front of Purdy's pass. It was intended, it was going to, I think, Luke Farrell, one of the tight ends. 49ers picked him up this offseason. Kind of on a little hook route, maybe a little slant route. And Purdy just shouldn't have been that aggressive with that pass in that situation. But you just heard George Kittle say, I like my QB being aggressive in training camp. You've got to try new things. I just saw a list of big-name quarterbacks that included Herbert, might have included Mahomes, all those guys threw picks today at training camp. So I think that some people need to pump the brakes a little bit. Every single season we go through this, it is practice. It's a chance to work on things. Good quarterbacks even throw interceptions in games. You have to take some risks out on the field, but training camp is when you take even more aggressive risks to figure out exactly where the limits are. Now, big news earlier today. I've already reported on this a lot, but I could talk about it some more. Juwan Jennings and Colton McKivitz, for that matter, both setting shining examples of how to handle a contract situation. How about that? No hold in, no hold out, just football. And it wasn't just that Juwan Jennings was out there practicing today. He was out there leading the receiver room Like we have the entire sizzle reel that I was able to make today, and it's fun because we go out there and let me see if I could get this thing out. I think I have it somewhere here. I think that I transferred it over to my computer. If I could find it, then I'll put it up there. Not the 49ers sizzle reel, Mike. I'm talking about mine. I think that this is it right here. Yes, it is. We got the whole thing so we could play it. So Jauan Jennings is going to be on this. And you've got Nick Bosa and you've got Mykel Williams. I was talking about Mykel a little bit earlier. We're allowed to put up 90 seconds from practice, right? So this is exactly 90 seconds long. Here's the Alfred Collins part. That was part of my 90 seconds. I played it a little bit earlier, but Alfred Collins doing some work on the get-offs early during his first ever NFL practice. Here's Jauan Jennings. So you'll see that not only is Jauan out there, he is leading the break. And then he's being a leader. He's telling DeMarcus Robinson where to line up. And the whole practice, we just saw this good energy from Jauan Jennings. So yeah, he might want a new contract. He might deserve a new contract, but he's not sitting in the corner pouting. Neither is Colton McKivitz. Both of those guys are playing. And I find it really hard. And I'm sure there will still be some people upset that Jauan Jennings wants a new deal before his current one is up. But I find it really, really hard to paint him to be some kind of bad guy when he's literally doing his job. And I think going above and beyond his job description on the practice field, even while that contract situation is unresolved. I personally think that it's a shining example of how to handle these things. The 49ers have dealt with a large share of hold-ins and holdouts. It's not just Brandon Ayuk over the course of the past few seasons. This goes back several seasons. Those situations have always seemed to be distractions for the football team. Well, it's really, really difficult to argue that Jauan Jennings is being a distraction to the football team right now. And you heard Kyle Shanahan proactively go out and say that the 49ers are going to be trying to thread a needle and take care of Jauan Jennings and Colton McKivitz in a way that makes sense. Kyle is so upbeat in his media appearances so far this offseason. This is, to me, and this is going to relate to Jennings and to McKivitz, but Tim Kawakami, who is my colleague over at the San Francisco Standard. The link to the big article in the Standard is in the description, and you can go see Tim's piece. He had a one-on-one interview with Kyle Shanahan. This was yesterday on day one of camp, so you absolutely have to go check that out. But the Standard article that I wrote today is right up there. All of our work is up there, so go check out the Standard. You need to be subscribed. This is where you're going to get your deepest 49ers info, bar none. It's a good William Floyd reference. But Kyle Shanahan was like bouncing off the walls with positive energy during the course of his interview with Tim. And they went into a great number of things, including roster construction, roster building for the 49ers. And Kyle shared a lot of cool information. And I always talk about the 49ers strategy and their overarching look at how they're building this team. And we talk about A-list players for the 49ers, and they paid Brock Purdy, they paid Fred Warner, they paid George Kittle, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk last offseason. Those obviously were all players whom the 49ers considered A-listers. And, I think that we can fairly easily figure out who an A-lister is. It's a player who plays near the top of his position, at or near the top, and is a superstar. But I think when you're a football team handing out big contracts to guys who are A-listers, you have to have probably a slightly more scientific way to determine who's an A-lister and who's not. And in his interview with Tim, Kyle went out and said that guys who we envision being here for at least 3 years are the guys that we're looking to lock up with long-term deals. So he didn't say specifically, oh, those are A-listers, but finally we had a way of quantifying, like the 49ers saying how they quantify and how they determine who that type of player is. So very obviously, Juwan Jennings and Colton McKivitz are not in that very top tier of 49ers player like a Christian McCaffrey, a George Kittle, a Trent Williams. But they're still very, very important to the 49ers, and they're still good football players. Like Juwan Jennings especially is a really, really good football player. But does he fit the 49ers philosophy of somebody that they want to sign and make sure that he's here for at least the next 3 years? He's just turned 28 years old. And if that would cost 15 to 20 million, I mean, it takes both sides to sign on the dotted line. The player gives up the rights to go elsewhere when the team earns that contractual control when they do ink a deal. And Juwan Jennings, I'm sure, has his price of what it would take to stick around under 49ers contractual control for 3 or 4 years. And that might be close to 20 million a year. I don't know. I'm speculating right now, but it's obviously outside the 49ers price range because they don't deem him as a prototypical A-list player. But they still, and Kyle Shanahan said this, would like to recognize the fact that he's really damn good and very important to the team in 2025. He's obviously better than the $7.5 million that he's scheduled to make. And the reason that we got to this point is because he had an unexpectedly large role last year and showed that he can be a 1,000-yard receiving guy. So how do the 49ers bridge that gap? They're not willing to go 3 years, $20 million a year with Juwan Jennings, but they recognize that 1 year at $7.5 million is not quite enough. How do you bridge the gap to get to somewhere in between those two numbers? Can you do it with incentives? Can you find an incentive package that makes Juwan Jennings satisfied in this situation? Same thing with Colton McKivitz. I mean, both of these guys are scheduled to hit free agency next year. I think both of these guys are very interested in hitting free agency, especially if the 49ers aren't willing to fork over an offer that's very, very large. In the case of Colton McKivitz, I just point at other offensive tackles around the league, even his former teammate, Jalen Moore, who signed for $15 million annually with the Chiefs, despite being lower on the 49ers pecking order than McKivitz. So you try to bridge the gap. And today, Kyle Shanahan said that he gave Juwan Jennings some advice. And obviously, Juwan Jennings has taken that advice. Shanahan said, I always recommend them to do what I think will help them the most. And I think Juwan is doing that. I think that what Shanahan told Jennings is, hey, go out there, practice, be mature about this. Don't make a big stink about this. And, you know, we understand that you're in between a rock and a hard place. We are too. But good faith from both sides will allow a good faith resolution to be reached. And I've said for the last week or so, ever since it became known that Jennings wanted this new contract, I've said for the last week that incentives, a good, fair incentive package, would likely be the easiest way out of this for the 49ers. But this can come in many different shapes and sizes, right? Incentives can look very, very different from contract to contract. So it's going to be fascinating to see how exactly this pans out. Some more intel from practice today. Kyle Shanahan said that Isaac Guerendo, been very, very impressed with how Isaac Guerendo has handled his rehab. Guerendo got hurt in the final game of the season. It was one last injury in a season full of insult and injury for the 49ers, right? He got hurt in Arizona. I still remember him getting carted off the field. Guerendo's fully healthy now, attacking training camp, obviously one of the fastest players on this 49ers team. I just thought it was worth noting that Kyle noted that Isaac Guerendo has been attacking the rehab well. He also said that we think that D. Winters can be a hell of a player. We saw the interception today from D. Looked like a vet undercutting the route. Shanahan said that it was mainly on Purdy, and George Kittle implied that as well. I don't think the 49ers care. I think that they want Purdy to be aggressive. But you know what else you want? You want D. Winters to make the quarterback pay for being too aggressive. And he's got to be in the right spot. He has to be on his keys. He has to be playing well with his eyes to make that possible. And guess what? D. Winters was able to do that for the 49ers today. You know, Nick Bosa talked today about Robert Salah. This is a good one. Robert Salah is going to speak to the media tomorrow, but listen to this quote from Bosa on Salah.
When I was a rookie, I didn't really know any better. So, yeah, having him back has been awesome. I've spent a good amount of time with him, played a little golf, and hung out in OTAs. So I got to know him a little more as a person, which is cool. And then just his commanding presence in the defensive meetings is it's what we needed.
See, Bosa's so thoughtful. So John Lynch calls it the economy of Nick Bosa's words. Nick Bosa makes his words count. And he's a big reader, by the way. He's a voracious reader. He posts all these books that he's reading on social media. So I love his vocabulary. He said that the talent of Mykel Williams and Alfred Collins is immense. But then there at the very end, you could tell that Bosa slowed down, paused a bit, and nodded as he said that the 49ers really, really needed Robert Saleh's commanding presence in the defensive meeting room. I don't think that it was an accident that Nick Bosa said that. I think that the 49ers really lacked that last season. They had a first-time defensive coordinator. I mean, there's nothing against Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen was thrust into a job that he probably wasn't ready for yet last year, especially after the 49ers suffered all those injuries. They really needed a veteran stabilizing voice in that room from the coaching staff, and I don't think they had it in 2024. I don't think that it matched well with what they were running in 2023 with Steve Wilks. Now they have it with Robert Saleh back. Now, Bosa, this Bosa-Saleh reunion, this is a fun one because back in 2020, the last time they played together, and Bosa tore his ACL that year. So really back to 2019 because Bosa was a rookie for the 49ers that year. That year, Nick Bosa and Robert Saleh was more like a coach-player thing, and there was a division. Now they're golfing together. So Bosa is now the grizzled vet. Robert Saleh, probably has taken an edge off too because he's been a head coach. He's been through, that whole situation in New York that obviously wasn't easy, but I think that hardened him as a coach. And now they're golfing together. They've got this relationship off the football field. And I think what that can really help with is the way that the 49ers impart the coaching staff's message to all these rookies. This is the stat that I keep on coming up with, and I talked about it up on the article on the San Francisco Standard, which is here for you to read. We can toss this back up there. It's in the description, so go check it out. But the 49ers have to replace over 40% of their defensive snaps. Bosa's saying they really need that commanding voice in the meeting room, partly because I don't think they had that type of commanding voice last year, but partly because he's surrounded by all these new faces. When you are bringing along new rookies and just new players in general and trying to fit them into a system, the coaching staff can only do so much before you need your established veteran pillars to translate the rest of the message. They have to be that intermediary. So the coaching staff and the A-list guys like Bosa, like Fred Warner, like Deommodore Lenoir, they've got to be in sync. That's like really, really important. So this whole Bosa and Robert Saleh golfing together, Bosa talking the way that he is about Robert Saleh, Shanahan talking the way that he does about Robert Saleh making that return from the New York Jets. I don't think it's a small thing. And I can't wait to hear from Robert tomorrow and delve a little bit more into that dynamic, because you've got to have that structure of communication in there to make sure that the rookies have the right framework to succeed. The 49ers are undergoing a massive undertaking when it comes to their rookie class this season. I mean, you saw the depth chart that I put up on the screen, all that green, right? Ultimately, they would love to have 5 rookies starting. They use their first 5 picks on defensive rookies this year. Like defensive players were the first 5 picks of their draft. It's the first time the 49ers have done that since 1981. That obviously worked out well. That was the Ronnie Lott draft class. But when you do invest that much in defensive youth, you better have the infrastructure to shepherd that youth along. And between Bosa and Mykel Williams getting to shadow Nick Bosa everywhere around the field, and Robert Salah, the new coordinator, and his relationship with Nick Bosa, I think the 49ers have gone a long way to ensure that that structure is in there. Heck, they even have Gus Bradley in there helping out Robert Salah. Gus Bradley, a former head coach. So if they lacked gravitas at the top of the defensive coaching power structure in the past, they do not lack it this season with both Robert Salah and Gus Bradley in for the 49ers. So the 49ers defensive bounce back effort is underway. We'll see how it ends up. I can't tell you how it's going to end up. I could talk about the strategy, and I do think what the 49ers have done from that strategic perspective definitely is fascinating. And would you have done anything differently? What would you guys have done? I'm actually genuinely curious. I don't offer this as a rhetorical question. What would you have done differently? Or do you think 2 thumbs up? And you could put the 2 thumbs up in the comment section as a response. What would you have done differently with the 49ers defensive reconstruction this offseason? A lot of people, I'm sure, will say, oh, they should have re-signed Dre Greenlaw. I think at some level they tried to, but you can't go completely out of bounds and break every single financial rule in the books to try to bring back a guy who played only 35 snaps last year. So, I mean, they flew to Texas to make that last-ditch effort to hold on to Greenlaw, but they obviously had a limit in their pursuit, as they should. I mean, that's just smart business from the 49ers. And Greenlaw's price exceeded that limit, and he wanted to be the guy in Denver. They're going to see him on August 7th. That's going to be a joint practice at Levi's between the 49ers and the Broncos, and that much is history. I mean, Dre Greenlaw was a great 49er, but as far as how the 49ers have tried to rebuild this unit, this on-the-fly retool, replace 40% of the snaps, I think the key figure in all of this was Robert Salah, and they managed to bring him back. And now we'll see how all those defensive investments from the NFL draft go. We got our first look at them on the practice field today. It was what I call a 49ers rookie bonanza as we go deep into this first 49ers practice. Everybody make sure right now that you turn on your notifications. We got a lot of really good content is going to be rolling in over the course of, the rest of my life probably, but over the course of the next few days, especially 49ers training camp. We've got an instant reaction up today from the helmet. You know that we love our helmet reactions. A lot of you guys are watching this instant reaction from the helmet. We have 21,000 people have watched it already. So if you want to know when I go live in 4K from the helmet outside the 49ers building, right after these practices with the most in-depth instant reaction that there is, you need to hit that notification bell. Because if you don't hit the notification bell, you won't know when I'm going live. Then you should also become a member, because if you do become a member, you can watch the big interview that I just put up first ahead of anybody. Like, that's not even out yet for the general public. You can watch the Jim Cotta interview. He's worked with so many big names. We talk about the 49ers injury situation. That's obviously very relevant, even more relevant now, given the injury to Jacob Cowing today, the hamstring injury. We talk about a lot of that with Jim Cotta. So become a member, hit the notification bell, and of course, sign up for the San Francisco Standard. The link is in the description. It is time for our first 49ers practice Q&A of this 2025 season. We're trying to crack 90,000, trying to become the first 49ers channel with 100,000 real subscribers, and also maybe 100,000 real members one day. But thank you to Stephen Clark. New member is aboard. Ask some good questions, guys. Eric Gomes, you heard it from him. I want some good questions. I'm ready for them. Did I see Stone Blanton? Yes, I did. Lots of linebacker out of Mississippi State, undrafted rookie. He was out there practice. As I told you, Luke Gifford is currently the 49ers' number 3 linebacker, the veteran. Stone Blanton, Nick Martin, the rookies. They're going to have their chance to make a move as training camp progresses. Remember, pads do not come on till Monday. I think especially at a position like linebacker, it's going to take the pads to have a little bit of idea of how some of these rookies are doing. Will I be at the Texans game? Yes, I'm going to be at every single 49ers game this year, including the preseason. How likely is it that Mason Pline takes the tight end 3 job from Ross Dwelley? Well, Ross is now an older player, so I think it's possible if Pline continues improving at the trajectory that they saw in the first year. They liked him enough to bring him back, but this is going to be a really, really important training camp for Mason Pline because you've got to have the floor. I think he's got a very high ceiling given the size, given the rawness of the player. I mean, this is somebody who was a basketball player up until midway through college. So there is a lot of meat left on the bone, but he's got to start really approaching that potential sooner rather than later if he's going to usurp anybody on a 53-man depth chart. Because you know that Dwelley is going to give you a good floor. So at a certain point, a coach has to be able to sleep easy at night, especially with a position that's not at the very top of the depth chart, like tight end 3. Dwelley is going to give you a good floor. What kind of floor can Mason Pline give the 49ers? Thoughts on Tariq Owens? Can he make the 53? I think he's got a shot just because there's so much upheaval right now in the wide receiver room. Today, out of the unheralded guys, it was Russell Gage that made the biggest splashes. Gage, he's a 29-year-old receiver. We got a photo of him right here. By the way, shout out to Amanda, who was our photographer for the San Francisco Standard. Look at some of these photos that Amanda got today. And this is why you need to subscribe to the Standard, because you've got awesome photos that you're not seeing anywhere else. This is George Kittle making a catch. This is George. That's a cool photo from George Kittle at his press conference. Here's a video of Jawan Jennings. You can see the headlining photo. That's Jawan at the front of the receiver line, leading things for the 49ers today. But, there's Mykel Williams, and that's Chris Kasarik. Really nice photos, right, from practice today. But we have this one of Russell Gage. He made that catch against Upton Stout today. I'm not saying Gage is going to make the 53, but at least, you have a chance as one of these older veterans to audition for a practice squad spot. We'll see how the dust settles. I mean, guys are going to come back. Ricky is going to come back on Sunday. I'm sure Jacob Cowing will be back at some point. I thought Jordan Watkins has looked good since he's been drafted by the 49ers. The rookie has impressed them. So Tariq Owens is going to have to find his way through that entire fray. I mean, he's fighting with veterans who are long shots, and he's also fighting with Isaiah Nair, a similarly athletically gifted rookie, undrafted free agent. So there's a lot of competition. There's uncertainty, but there's a lot of competition and opportunity for the 49ers at the receiving position. Any kicker news? No, besides the fact that they just made all 8 of their kicks today, like 4 for 4 for Moody and 4 for 4 for Greg Joseph. Love the fact that Jawan Jennings is putting in work, even though he's still in negotiations. I think that it speaks to Jawan Jennings and how much of a gamer he is. So we'll see how that all turns out. We'll see how it turns out with Colton McKivitz as well. No kicker news is good news. Anything on Collins? Well, yeah, I've been talking about Collins at the top of the show. We saw the tallest 49er today, Alfred Collins, 6'7". Maybe Mason Pline has him. I think Pline is 6'7" as well. But that was Collins' first practice. Looks like he got through it. Jim wants to know how long we're going to see Jacob Cowing out. And I will say that we don't know yet. Even Shanahan didn't know. They've got to test the severity of the hamstring strain. At that point, if it's like a 3-day thing or a week-long thing, usually it's a week at least, right? Could be something a little bit more significant. They could go in, look at it, and say, hey, this is going to be a month. That would be really bad news given how much hype Jacob Cowing was getting from the 49ers, his teammates and the coaching staff this offseason. We got some Jawan Jennings fans in the house. The best wideout in the NFL. Watch out. He's a beast. We know Jawan Jennings is a really good football player. I don't know if he's the best in the NFL, but I think that he is very, very good. What are the chances that Siegel starts at free safety? Really good question. You know, last year, Malik Mustafa was a rookie and he ended up starting at safety, but it took him a few weeks into the regular season. I think realistically, a rookie is going to have some runway time into the season. He's going to have to go through the day-to-day film study, preparing for a game, for the coaching staff to be comfortable with him in that safety spot. Now, a rash of injuries can make it happen sooner, but I would say if things go perfectly for Marquise Siegel, same type of trajectory as Malik Mustafa last year. So starting within the first couple of months of the season, but maybe not right away. Now, he's got the physical tools. He was the fastest safety in the entire draft class. I can't repeat that enough. The guy is a really, really gifted player when it comes to physical traits. And I think they want traits guys at safety. I think that gives Pinnock a nice little inside track. Malik's got good traits. And then you look at somebody like Marquise Siegel. They all have better traits than Jair Brown, who was drafted back when Steve Wilkes was the defensive coordinator. I think they really, really want guys who can fly, cover ground in that zone defense at safety. So that gives Marquise Siegel a good leg up, but we'll see what he can do with it now. You know, you've got to earn it over the course of the next weeks and months. Hello to another new member, Randy Milliken. Yeah, that's Milliken. Hello, Randy. Thank you to Randy. Thank you to Steven. They've become members. That's really good stuff. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. I have a question for everyone. Mike is going to help me devise this question. Which player do you want me to report on the most? Which 49ers player do you want me to report on the most? This is the first practice of 2025 training camp, so we're doing some crowdsourcing here. Which player do you want me to report on the most? I'm going to be looking. JJ, I already see Brock is the second answer that we have here. Jennings, like people love Jawan Jennings. Nick Martin and Jordan Watkins. That's Mike answering his own question, though. Nick Martin is practicing, yes, but he's still behind Luke Gifford on the depth chart. It was just practice number 1 today. Jordan Watkins, Drew Moss, one of our answers. It's an undrafted free agent offensive guard. JJ, CJ West, Isaiah Nayer. I mean, we're getting a lot of good answers here. Kind of love this. Even if you're watching this later when we're not live, go ahead and put that in the comment section who you want me to report on most, and I'm going to go and watch this a little bit later. Mykel Williams, Renardo Green. This is cool to see roll through. CMC. You know, that's funny. Like CMC, Mike and I noticed trends, right? We put up a video. I write an article. For some reason, whenever we've done something about CMC this offseason, it hasn't generated nearly as much traffic as CMC stuff has generated in previous off seasons. I don't know if people are a little like gun shy right now about the whole situation, but you know, people, it was so bogus during OTAs. People just trying to get clicks. Oh, CMC's lost a step, even though I don't even know what I'm looking at, kind of thing. You know, that was the big social media narrative a couple months ago. I know what I'm looking at, right? So I can speak on this with a little bit more authority. But McCaffrey is looking spry. I thought he looked spry in OTAs. Today he looked even better. Oh, you got to wonder if there's going to be some of that dad strength now, right, for Christian McCaffrey. Kyle Shanahan actually had the best quote about Christian today. This is one that we absolutely need to put up on the screen. Is Christian McCaffrey going to change at all now that he is a dad? Well, let's listen to Kyle Shanahan's thoughts on the matter.
So then asked him if he was going to change now that he's a dad, and he made it adamant he wouldn't. So we'll see. I'm sure he won't. He's a psycho.
He's a psycho. Kyle Shanahan just loves calling Christian McCaffrey a psycho. Anyway, I'm sure that Christian heard all of that idiotic talk over the course of, I know for a fact actually that he did. I'm sure that he will respond to that idiotic talk, not with his words, but with his preparation, which will lead to his play. And I'm sure that the interest in Christian McCaffrey, I am saying the videos with Christian McCaffrey's name on them don't do as well right now for whatever reason. I'm sure that's going to turn around over the course of this season. So I get it. People talking about Christian, wanting me to report on him more. You might be in the minority right now, but I think that you won't be in the minority in a couple months' time. Alfred Collins. Nice. Mason Pline. It's the first time I've ever heard somebody say Mason Pline is somebody I'd like you to report more on. But hey, your opinion is your opinion. I appreciate it. Somebody said Isaiah Taylor. I don't know who Isaiah Taylor is. There's not an Isaiah Taylor currently on the 49ers roster. There's an Isaiah Hodgins, but there's not an Isaiah Taylor. McCaffrey does look strong this offseason, does look physically jacked. But I think that he's also just moving well. Definitely better than last year. And it makes sense. Last year he was coming off of that Achilles injury. Isaiah Nayer. Oh, that's what you meant. You meant Isaiah Nayer. Got it. Because you put Isaiah Taylor and I had no idea who you meant. Yeah, Isaiah Nayer. There's a Hodgins and there's an Isaiah Nayer. So I could report on both of those guys. See a Jordan James. That's a good one. The running back. This is a good comment. Keep it real with facts. That's what I do. Just sit here and spit facts for about an hour. That was the goal of this show. Ghost says the 49ers have to protect CMC from himself. I mean, you guys have basically named every single player on the roster at this point, which is cool. I'm glad that you did. All right, everybody go check out the instant reaction. It is up. It is time for me to go think about getting some dinner. But that reaction is there. It's available. It's ready for you. And of course, have a good night. We'll be back with you maybe tomorrow morning. Who wants a morning video too? Raise your hand if you want a morning video on top of the reaction, on top of the later video. Do you want something that holds you over until the reaction in the morning? Because you've got all his content that I'm putting out. We got special content coming out. We got a new member right here, Corbin. Thank you to August as well. We got a new member. Thank you. But do you guys want a morning video? Give me a thumbs up if you want a morning video. And if you could do me a favor, and if you can go ahead and sign up to the San Francisco Standard, go through this article. Like right now, it's going to be well worth it. It's going to make this journey fun. Thought I'd plug it here on the first day of 49ers training camp. Everybody, thanks for watching. We will talk to you very, very soon.